Hello everybody, and welcome to the D&D podcast. Today I will be giving my opinion on the module Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Obviously, there will be several spoilers because I will be covering the entire module. Now, I have had the opportunity to be a player and a DM in this module. It started out when the book first came out. One of my friends got their hands on an early copy, and they asked me if I wanted to be in a group and try it out. I said yes, so it was me and two other guys. We sat down and we gave it a try. It was very different, and I loved it. I always joked around saying it was a lot like a D&D tycoon simulator. Because a large part of the game is managing this bar you run. The Troll Skull Alley Tavern, if I remember correctly. You're giving it as a gift instead of 100 gold coins that a man named Volo was supposed to give you. Now, Volo is the same Volo that wrote the 5e book Volo's Guide to Monsters. He is also, at least the way I and my former DM portrayed him, a snobbish jerk that is very in your face and has how do I phrase this? He always seemed to have the moral high ground even when he never did, if that makes any sense. So, after we obtained the Troll Skull Alley deed, and we put our names on it, well, actually, funny thing, initially when I was a player, me and this other guy, we have known each other from previous games, and we put our names on the deed. But the third player with us, he just would not accept it. We do not understand why to this day, but he just kept demanding the 100 gold, even though Volo did not have 100 gold on him. So he just continued to demand and demand. Eventually, me and the other player just moved on. We signed our names, and we asked if he wanted a job to work under us. For some reason, he said yes to that, and he had a significantly less income for the rest of the campaign. I was always confused by that, but that's not the point of this video. Now, when you actually are in the bar, there are a couple of things you need to buy, like renovations, which take a lot of gold and a lot of time. Then you have to purchase memberships for example, like it's the equivalent of a D&D liquor license and the ability to sell in this neighborhood. You could always refuse to buy them, but then you won't exactly be on good terms with everyone. Now, there are a lot of things you can do with this tavern. You can also get very creative with it. For example, when I was in my original group playing, there's a basement. We went down there, and as a druid, I knew the cantrip Move Earth, which let me take a square cube of dirt and basically just move it. So I dug out a fight pit in the basement. Well, a little bit under the basement. We had to break the ground a little bit. And yeah, we had illegal fighting tournaments down there. And it was an extra source of income. It wasn't too much, but it was good to have a little bit extra. And I like the open-endedness of that. It doesn't limit you to what you can and can't do, though it does give you a list of laws in the back of the book with very strict rules and regulations saying, for example, if you steal an artifact from a god's temple and desecrate it, then you'll be put to death. Or if a nobleman kills a peasant, they'll be fined 50 gold. I guess it just was a different time. The entire setting is in the town of Waterdeep, which there are many locations that are very well detailed and well thought out. And I really enjoyed the bits here and there where we would just go out, or my players would just go out and they would discover something new, such as the trinket shop. Actually, it was really fun to incorporate one of those trinkets into a overall horror-themed side story, but I'll tell you all the Slenderman story a different time. Yes, I said the Slenderman story. It sounds ridiculous. The overall story of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. You get a bar, a couple of things happen, you may or may not join some guilds, such as the Emerald Enclave, the Order of the Gauntlet, each of which recruits different people for different reasons. I remember the Emerald Enclave were pretty exclusive to Rangers and Druids, while, for example, the Xanathar Guild was exclusive to people that are just evil. Now, you would do guild missions and then build up, I believe they were called renown points. The more renown you had, the higher ranking in the guild you were. It's more like, I can't exactly think of a perfect metaphor for this situation, but the more renown you had, just the higher you are in the guild, the more recognizable you are amongst the people, and so on and so forth. It's basically like honor. Well, maybe not exactly like that, but if you just need something to go off of, I guess honor. After a while, a plot does seem to unfold as a NPC that you have met before. His father sends an artifact to you. It does not get there, and instead there is a giant murder scene outside of your tavern. That reveals a plot about a beholder, Xanathar, trying to get this item called the Stone of Galore. I believe it was the Stone of Galore. And because this stone has some hidden knowledge to the Never Ember Vault. Now, this kind of brings around the entire title of the heist. You're not actually pulling off a heist, like the title seems to imply. You are actually trying to prevent a heist. You're trying to prevent an ancient, very powerful beholder from coming to power with much more financial virtue. If you are able to get the Stone of Galore, which when I was a player, we never got that far, but my players, when I DM'd, they completed the entire game. So when my players were actually successful in stopping this long, convoluted plot of the Stone of Galore going into Xanathar, and they were able to successfully obtain the stone. From there, the stone began talking to them and letting them know about the Never Ember Vault. They needed 3 keys to enter, one of which they fortunately had, one of which they had to demand, and a final which they had to earn. I won't go into too specifics because I cannot remember for the life of me exactly what they were. But as they entered the vault, this is where it got a little bit confusing for me. Now there is a kind of a pseudo dungeon in there, more just like a mini dungeon, where there are a couple of rooms that you could potentially get lost in, a couple of wrong turns, but overall it's a pretty straightforward path from there to the gold. And when they get there, there's a dragon disguised as a dwarf there. Now he's pretty friendly, and he doesn't seem to have any hostile intentions. It's also a little bit confusing of why a dwarf is just there. Now, the reason it was confusing for me and my players is because there was a big "so what now" moment. They had reached the vault. They didn't exactly know if they had prevented the heist. They just knew they got to the vault first. So there was almost this big "so what now" moment. Eventually it led to suspicion against the dwarf, which led to an attack from one of the members. As this dwarf morphed into a dragon, he began to attack the level 5 party. I know the party is supposed to be at level 4 at this point in time, or level 3, but because of the Slenderman incident I mentioned earlier, and I always play by the XP system, not the milestone, they were at level 5. Now, as this dragon was completely demolishing them and they were trying to get away and failing, because the only way they could go was up, and the dragon could just fly up. Eventually, though, the Xanathar Guild actually succeeded in breaking into the vault, which caused a team-up between the dragon and the players against the members of the Xanathar Guild. I had to improvise all of that because there wasn't very much telling of what they were supposed to do. There is a ending in the book of if they take the gold or leave the gold, but that's about it. There's not much of a what do they do while they're in there section. That would probably be my only complaint about the adventure as a whole. For overall, I absolutely loved it. I loved being a player in it, and I loved DMing it. It was something fresh and something new compared to the many homebrew games I was a part of, along with Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd, which were very fun, don't get me wrong. I extremely enjoyed them, but Waterdeep Dragon Heist was a breath of fresh air, just something new, just shake it up, not just your wandering adventurers going from town to town. For once, it's more like you are a group of heroes that are centered in a certain location, and the events are coming to the location. You're not going to the events, if that makes any sense. And I really enjoyed that. Maybe just because it was new, and it was also very well written and very enjoyable overall. The story was very good, especially the rivalry with the neighboring business person. I believe his name is pronounced Amek. It's like, I know it starts with an E, but the best way any of us could ever pronounce it was Amek. And he went immediately from a minor nuisance in both situations, from a minor nuisance to hated so much more than Xanathar the Beholder himself, which we all, in both groups, we thought was hilarious both times. Since he actually isn't written to be very much of a threat, and at the very end, there's a scenario where the players could just forgive Amek and actually loan him money if they took the money from the vault. But I cannot, the way he is, and the way he was portrayed both times, I do not see any scenario in which he would be just forgiving, when there is that much diabolical hatred towards him both times. Granted, that could be chalked up to the way he was role-played and not the way he was actually written, but if he can be interpreted that in two different scenarios, it may be the way he was written, and I just love it. But overall, I really enjoyed Waterdeep Dragon Heist. I would highly recommend it. Probably not as a first adventure, but for someone who's played at least maybe a one-shot or two or a campaign, if you're familiar with D&D, I highly recommend Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Well, that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed this opinion piece. I'm not sure what else to call it. If you have, give me a like, comment, subscribe. If you comment what else you'd like to hear me talk about. I hope you all have a good day, and until next time, roll well.